everybody. Welcome to another Faith and Finance Tuesday. Hey, listen, I'm so glad that you joined me tonight again for taking time out of your Tuesday just to be here with me. Hey, listen, we're going to have another good show tonight. I got a good guest, and we're going to have a good time. So I'm your host, Martin Adair, and as always, y'all know I'm excited to be here. We're in episode number 9 tonight. So it's good to be here. As my grandfather always used to say, it's good to be in the land of the living. So, y'all, we're going to get in. We're going to start talking about some personal financial growth, and we're going to be talking about just a lot of good stuff tonight. So, y'all joining in. I hope that y'all get something out of this. But I want to take care of some business before we get really started tonight, okay? I promised them that I was going to make sure that I promoted what they had going on. And so here's the first one. This is Bulletproof with Mr. Bob Coleman, y'all. He got an event coming up October the 10th, 2026. And remember, he said that if you're interested in coming, that this is a free event. It's in Arizona. So the only thing you got to do is get there. Everything else is going to be, the event itself is going to be free. And you can see the guest speakers that's going to be there this year. This is Bulletproof number 8. So he's been doing it for 8 years now. And look, you see what it says, dream big and live bold. So this is Bulletproof, and I encourage you all to be a part of it. Come on out. Bob Coleman is going to be there doing this thing. Amen. All right. And the next one, y'all remember Brother Antonio? He was another guest on the show the other day. He does a weekly wisdom call. Weekly wisdom. If you want to be a part of the weekly wisdom, there's the phone number right there on the screen. Jot that phone number down. He's 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern. If you're in the Central Zone, that means it's 8 p.m. And if you're in the Western Zone or Mountain, that'll be what it'll be about 7 to 6 for you. But he's coming on every Wednesday. So, guys, I wanted to make sure that I promoted those guys just to say thanks, and I'll do this for a couple of weeks just so you guys can get the information and get the numbers because they poured into us, all right? All right, y'all. We got our guests coming on here. Hey, tonight we're going to continue the conversation about developing the mind to prosper. Y'all, I want you to help me welcome a good friend of mine, Doug Hungerford. This brother here is, get your pencils, get your pens, and get your notepad because I'm telling you, you're going to get some good information tonight. If you're looking to, whatever it is, y'all, he just got a wealth of knowledge. And let's welcome Doug. Hey, Doug, before we jump in, why don't you take a few minutes and tell everybody a little bit about yourself? First of all, can you hear me real well?
Yeah, I can hear you. My question was going to be, can you hear me?
I can hear you fantastic. Can y'all
But
hear?
I didn't know that was going to be the answer. That's awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If y'all can hear, give us some thumbs ups in the chat if y'all can hear. But yeah, I can hear you fine.
I wouldn't know how to see that anyways. But
I can
yeah,
hear
I
you.
appreciate the introduction. I appreciate you having me on here. It's always nice to kind of share at least a little bit of what I've learned through my journey. Just to give a little bit of information about myself, I guess I'm in my mid-30s now, which is weird to say out loud and kind of weird to accept. And
Well, wait till you start saying you're in your mid-50s.
I know it feels like it's going to be tomorrow. But, I started working in 2008. A lot of people were losing their homes, but me, I was just happy to have my first job working birthday parties at a bowling alley. And still think that might be the most fun job I've had. Spend a lot of time bowling and not so much time working. But, after that, I bounced around a lot, which is what you're not supposed to do by, convention. People want to see that this person's willing to go stick out a job for 5 years, 6 years, and that wasn't what I was doing. So I bounced around between, working for a bank, working for property and casualty insurance, life insurance, retail management. And basically my goal in every position I went into was just kind of what can I learn from doing this? And then real quickly, if that's your mindset, eventually you realize I'm kind of at a limit for what this role can teach me, at least in the time frame I'm trying to learn it. And so it was always kind of on to the next thing or on to the next city or next opportunity. And, for me, that worked out. But there was a lot of risk involved in that. And, it's kind of a bit of what I think we'll talk about tonight. Risk involved in that. But, now I'm I was fortunate enough to start a company with some friends, a tech company, government tech, and I was able to make an exit out of that, and that gave me the opportunity to jump into a bunch of other businesses as well, and kind of keep building from there. But gave me the opportunity to kind of take some time off and uh, kind of pursue some things I want to do, and most of that went back into consulting because it turns out what I want to do is help other people with their business. I want to help them grow as well. And, I've been focusing on that and making more software and whatnot in the meantime. But yeah, that's a little bit of kind of how I got to where I'm at right now, or the route that occurred. Obviously, a lot of stuff happened in the meantime. And I guess they're like kind of throughout that journey. And I guess that's what we'll kind of get into tonight.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna get into tonight. I'm excited about it too, and I know some of y'all might be looking at and saying this guy's in his mid 30s. What makes him qualified to be talking to us? Uh, well, Doug built a business and he sold that business and made a substantial amount of money with that business, guys. So he knows what he's doing. And it was amazing to me, Doug, that like you said, you in your mid 30s. I met you. I think you was what 33, 32.
Yeah, I think 30, yeah, 32 ish when we met, probably.
Yeah, so you're the same age as my oldest son. So,
Hmm.
but get on into the questions, Doug. So before you started your business and before the success came and all that good stuff, uh, what did you believe was possible for your own life? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing I would point out about the question is that success is this bar that moves every time you get to a certain spot.
mm-hmm,
So, it's funny. Would I consider myself successful compared to what like points I was at in the past? Yeah. Do I consider myself generally successful? Yeah. But is there a finish line of I feel like I made it? Like, no, I really want to try to avoid that, because it keeps you from, it kind of puts you in this mindset of you kind of lose, you know, the desire to want to go provide value to people if you feel like you already made it. At least myself, I can't speak for everybody,
mm-hmm.
but for me, I just try to not be satisfied with where I am. But in terms of how my viewpoints changed on that over time, I mean, it really just depends on what point in the journey we're talking about. There were, from the time I grew up, I was always very book smart. I've always been, quick. I've been intelligent, but
Right.
I'm autistic, and I didn't learn that until later in life. But it meant there was a lot of stuff about me that I didn't quite understand growing up. But I knew I was smart. I know when I'm right. Don't always know how to communicate it. But it got to a point where, you know, I I grew up smart. I always felt like things were going to work out for me. I just kind of knew they were going to work out for me. But then
Right.
you kind of hit these patches in life where you're like, but it's okay if it doesn't. Like so many people go through life and they never really make it. They never really get comfortable, but they still live good lives. And you, it, I never really hung around in that mindset for long. But it would be lying to say that mindset never crept up. There would be.
Yep.
I don't know. There was a famous chef, maybe Anthony Bourdain or somebody, who said that their life was like this battle every day to just do something other than sit on the couch and watch cartoons and eat breakfast cereal. For me, that was like smoking weed and playing video games. Like,
Yeah.
there were days where I was like, I can settle for just doing this every day because I genuinely like doing this. And so, you know, I think what really turned all that around was the spark, the actual idea of, here's what we want to do for a business, that we had. And, once you get that spark, it's all, you realize it's just kind of a mindset thing. Like nothing really changed except an idea. And we started implementing on the idea. But you realize that once you start interacting with a lot of people, especially people in high positions, nobody really knows what they're doing. Um, Nobody knows what they're doing. And
Right.
everyone's just trying their best to make it. A lot of these people are smarter than you. A lot of these people aren't smarter than you. But a lot of these people, I'd look around and I'd see people who are super successful, and I was like, they are like some of the, least book smart people I've ever met, but they figured something out. And that's what really, really kind of paying attention to that and meeting some people that, it's, they're very intelligent in something, but I can also be intelligent in something. I can learn something too. I can make something
Yeah.
cool. Like, and if that's all it takes to, be successful, which it's not, what it really takes is a lot of luck along the way. And that's kind of another piece that I want to talk about. But luck doesn't just kind of, it can happen to you on accident. Like you could just win the lottery, I guess, but even then, you're not going to win the lottery if you don't play the lottery. Like luck
Right.
doesn't work like that, you know. And I'm not saying go out and play the lottery, but I am saying like if you don't put yourself in the game, you know,
Yeah.
you're not giving yourself an opportunity to be lucky in the first place. So,
That's right.
but once I started, you know, and also the moving around a lot has always been kind of fun. You meet new people and you see what they're doing, and it kind of excites you. And
Mm-hmm.
that always made me want to, you know, made me think it was possible too. But again, what really made me think like, uh, oh, this is it's not out of the realm of possibility for somebody to build a business. You know,
Hey, Doug. Let me
yeah,
ask you this before I forget,
yeah.
because you like you said, you in your mid 30s.
Mhm.
When did you know that you wanted to become an entrepreneur? Uh,
I
uh,
didn't.
okay.
I didn't want to be. You know, I mean, sort of I did, but I grew up, I wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be, you know, a U.S. Marshal. I wanted to do something in like, you know, FBI, federal law enforcement of some sort. And, you know, it just, then I wanted to do military and I didn't go that route either. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's just so many things I wanted to do. And again, I think the entrepreneur thing just happened because, you know, I had accidentally exposed myself to so much information through
Right.
my multiple jobs that I realized like, you know, we could, you know, I could take what I've learned at this point. Like, yeah, I don't know everything on the planet, but I have a pretty good base of, you know, how we might get this thing rolling, and was able to kind of doing that. But yeah, it was never an intentional, like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to think of you know, an idea and I'm going to execute on that. I think that's where people get hung up is like, you can't start with the business if you don't know what problem you're solving. Like, you have
Right.
to
I
know
like that.
you, you have to know what value you're going to provide to others, because if you don't know, how are you going to convince them that you're going to provide value to them? Like, you
Yeah.
have to start with the problem and work through a solution in order to provide value to people. And in the grand scheme of economics in the world, like, that's really, you know, when you're out there in the business world, that's really all people care about is what value are you going to provide to me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in order to be able to provide that value, you have to know what their problems are in the first place. So start with the problem. And people overcomplicate that. You do want to find something that is a problem for a lot of people. But how many times have you in your life have you looked at something and been like, well, that's silly the way that they fixed that? That's an opportunity right there. Like, no matter what it is, if you see something silly in the implementation of a problem being solved, if you see a better way to do it, you don't have to go, you know, find these brand new problems. You can solve problems that have already been solved, but solve them better. But don't go pursue, you know, don't go try and compete, don't go create the next Google or something like that. You're not going to go try and
Right.
compete with them. But if there's small niche problems that you can become passionate about solving, you know, and for me, that happens to be in software. And I think that's a really good outlet for a lot of people who like solving problems, because there's a lot of problems you can solve with software. But it doesn't have to be software. It's any problem that you can find a solution for and provide value for people.
Yeah, and that help you get to where you're trying to get to. To
Mhm.
I think a lot of people we think about making wealth or building wealth, but we don't think about if we can solve some problems. Think about other people first. Let me say it like that. If we think
Right.
about helping somebody else,
The money should be the reward that you feel like you didn't deserve in the end.
yeah,
Like, you should be, your focus should be on solving the problem. You should work relentlessly to do that in a way that isn't about benefiting you. It's got to be in a way that's truly about benefiting your target customer. And you have to figure out how to convince them of that. But that's where your time needs to be spent, not thinking about how we're gonna, you know, spend our money, you know, before we
yeah,
have it. You know, those
yeah.
types. I mean, you do have to, obviously you have to budget. You know, we have to be careful about what I'm saying here and the way I present it. But you know,
But the money
the
is the
number one problem
byproduct.
has to be, yeah, exactly. It should be the thing that afterwards you're like, oh well, I guess I did work hard on this, so I guess I'll take this if you're gonna give it to me.
Right,
So
right, yeah, yep.
yeah.
So let me ask you this:
Mhm.
when, because me and you talk a lot, so uh, we talked about your college days before, right?
Mhm.
When did the mind shift happen? That mindset. When did it kind of you shifted the mindset and said, you know what, it's time for me to buckle down and really be serious about what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it was after I had moved to Colorado, which was, you know, pretty quickly after college, maybe a year after college, maybe not even that long. I was out there for a bit and I had a lot of fun and I spent a lot of money that I realistically shouldn't have been spending. And it got to a point where, I was like, I think this kind of gets to some other things we talked about, or maybe a question that we had talked about for tonight. But, like advice for people based on financial mistakes maybe that I've made, like, don't go out there and open credit cards to make one more month of rent. Solve the problem initially that got, buying yourself one month of rent through opening a new credit card and putting yourself in debt that you now have to pay off didn't solve any problems. You're just further in debt. Like,
Yeah.
you got to attack the problem of I don't have enough income coming in to pay the bills. Like you have to
Yeah.
solve that problem and you have to get out of a situation maybe where, and for me that meant leaving Colorado, but getting out of a situation where you're spending more than you should be and not taking the steps. Like, yeah, you could always spend the same amount of money and go find a way to make more income. But if you were not physically doing that, it doesn't matter what you could do. It matters what
Right.
you're
Right.
actively doing. So,
Yeah. And see, I like that advice because a lot of people, I say this, you heard it saying, you robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I
you're
said, you
robbing
robbing,
yourself.
yeah, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Peter broke.
Yep,
You know,
exactly right.
so
Exactly right.
and I like that because that puts us in a different mindset. Is
hmm
if I have debt, instead of going and create more debt, let's figure
hmm
out a way how to generate more money.
Yeah, generate money and also understand how debt works. Like a lot of people, I've done some financial advice in the past with people. I've done, like I said, life insurance and some planning, but a lot of people come in and they have, let's say, student loan debt that they're paying at 2.5 or 3%. And the first thing they want to do is pay that off. Like from a security mindset standpoint, there is benefit to paying off student loan at 3%, something along those lines. But from a practical financial standpoint, you can put money in just regular index funds, mutual funds, just so many different things in the market and make on average, 6 to 8%. You can find safe stuff that's going to be 4%, 4.5%. Like why, there's an opportunity cost for every dollar that we spend to pay off that student loan. Like I could have spent that money on something that had a higher interest rate than I was paying on that student loan. So
Hmm.
finding ways to maximize, if I don't have a lot of money to spend, it doesn't make the most sense. And I also want to be careful here because I don't want to say don't pay off your debt. If you're talking credit card debt at 18%, 29%, you're not going to go out there and get something better than 29%, just on the market. But if it's, you know, paying off something that's at 1 or 2% interest, like hold that debt, keep it on your, I say on your books, so I'm talking like a business. And I know it's people, but keep that debt, but invest that, like keep paying the minimum and whatnot, but invest that money. Now, if you're going to take that money and just spend it, you have to realize that you're the type of person who's not disciplined enough in this situation and you need to just pay down that debt. Like if you're just going to take that money and you're just going to use it on, you know, I don't want to say ice cream, but like, stuff
Right.
that's not critical to bringing in more income or bringing in an investment that is above that 2, 3, 4%, then spend the money on paying down the debt. But learn what your options are with debt because debt kind of traps people into this mindset of, oh, I have this debt. Not all debt is bad. Sometimes not paying off the debt is, or, sometimes it's even, you might need to take on more debt in order to, you know, do something as well. But I also, like I said, I want to be careful because I don't want to say like go out in there and take on debt. But at the same time, there's always ways that you can find investors or do something to
Hmm.
improve the situation,
Well,
at least from a business standpoint.
what you saying is kind of what Robert Kiyosaki, I think that's
hmm
his name, Rich Dad
hmm
Poor Dad.
He's the rich dad, poor dad,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, he kind of has that same philosophy. All debt is not bad debt.
yeah,
There's
yep.
some debt is worth having.
There
You
is
know,
also some very bad debts. I want to be clear about that as well. We have to be
yep.
careful about the debt that we do allow ourselves to get into, and again, if you have a credit card and you're way deep in credit card debt at 30%, is it fair to, the family, if you go out and spend your money trying to chase some kind of business that doesn't really have a likely chance of returning that revenue? Probably
Yeah.
not. But if you're a younger person, who doesn't have the wife, the kid, you obviously have more risk that you can take, more time to make it back up. You can maybe go in and leverage yourself a little further. Again, I'm not saying go take out a lot of debt, like find alternatives first, but at the same time, you do have the ability to maybe invest in yourself a little bit more, depending on your tolerance. And so that's the big things that people have to figure out. What is their tolerance based on their situation? Like, what is my tolerance for risk based on my family profile and,
Yeah.
even the opportunities around me. So,
And it has to go with age too.
yeah,
You know, if you're 65, you're not trying to take on the same
yeah,
tolerance or risk
exactly right.
tolerance as somebody that's 25. You,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
hey, before I go to the next question, I'll let everybody know that's watching. If you have a question and you want to address, you want the question of, I'm gonna try to get to as many questions as I can as time allow. But we do got a question, and
Hmm.
we got this question from. Can you see that? It says so. So is it more opportunity or knowledge?
Knowledge can be picked up along the way, you know, and that's like probably some advice I would give in general is find people who fill the gaps that you have in your own knowledge and bring them on board with you. Find a way to provide value to them, whether it be give them, part of a company or part of whatever you're kind of building, or whether it just be paying them a little for their time or buying them coffee, whatever. Like, use other people and don't just use them to try and take knowledge. See if you can give back knowledge in any way,
Mm-hmm.
but do take the knowledge that people are willing to give you. The opportunity is, I don't want to say opportunities are easy to find, but opportunities are a dime a dozen. The difference is you have to act on an opportunity. It doesn't matter if you have an idea of an opportunity for something you can do. It matters if you take the first step. And for some people, that first step is going to be, well, I'm going to go get a business license for this business idea I have. And that's a good first tactical step to maybe get them going. But that's an admin task. You're still not doing the work of the business yet.
Right. Right.
And so you gotta start putting in the actual legwork on the business to take advantage of the opportunity. But while you're doing that, just put yourself in situations to meet people. Use local resources. Colleges are great about that, like technical centers. Like there's just so many opportunities where you can learn the knowledge from other people, and people want to help you along the way too.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the, the most important step is you have to take the step to actually start doing the work. Because,
Yeah. You got
like I
you got
said,
to
it,
get.
it just it just doesn't matter how many good ideas you have, because people aren't
Mm-hmm.
paying you to sit there and think up good ideas. In some situations they are, but that in general, like, you got to go act on it. You got to go operate.
Yeah.
So,
You got to get off the couch. You
yeah,
can't,
exactly right.
can't just sit on the
Exactly.
couch all day. You
Unless your
know.
job is testing couches, then be the best
Yeah.
at that. But if your job ain't testing couches, you got to move.
You got that right. Actually, you talking about this in knowledge and opportunity. We was
Hmm.
talking earlier today, and I told you I had to go to a shop later on
Hmm.
today, and you was telling me, like, talking to me about the the value. What am I giving in exchange for the knowledge, right?
Hmm.
So I got to the shop earlier, and I told them, I said, hey, I'm gonna come back Thursday. And they're
Hmm.
like, come back. Okay, come back Thursday. Everybody gonna be here. I said, okay, I'm bringing lunch. So now
There
they
you
all
go.
like, yeah, we finna
Yeah.
go through this package right now,
Yeah. They're
and
gonna
we
look.
we gonna look at this and we gonna make sure we here Thursday. You
Yep.
know, but
There you go.
it's gonna give me a lot of knowledge in return.
Yeah.
You,
Absolutely.
you
It's
know, be,
the less, like, it really is a massive lesson, not just for business, but for life. But, like, we get so wrapped up in what we can do and what we can build that is going to benefit us. And we just lose sight of how is this supposed to help the person that I'm building it for? Like,
right.
how do I connect with those people? And, like, if you just keep those people first, like, the rest will work itself out. Like, maybe not quickly. Nothing happens quickly, but the rest will work itself out if you're pursuing that knowledge like we just talked about. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yep, you gotta figure out the value part. You gotta figure out, what am I, like, what is the other person's reason for accepting my offer here? Whether
Right.
that offer be for me to help them or for them to help me.
Right. Right. We getting off script here, but I
Mhm.
sent
Yeah,
this list,
I
but
tend to do that.
that's going out the window.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So listen to this. What was one of the biggest mistakes or lessons? Let's say lessons. What was one of the biggest lessons you learned on building your business as you was building your business?
There's so many routes that that question could go, but the first thing that comes to mind is like communication is about the most important thing on planet Earth. You know, like I said, I'm autistic, and I always have this, not always, maybe always have this notion that I'm correct because I am. But you know, you got to learn how to work with other people. And I've always had business partners, and you know, I've had great business partners, and they have put up with my inability to communicate because it's my way or the highway. And you know, I think the things I wish I worked the most on were learning how to communicate with other people in my life a little earlier, not just on the business side, but you know, you can only lean on like, you know, here's my opinion, and then when people disagree with you, you kind of just shut them down. You can only lean on that for so long before you just kind of shelter. So many people don't want to deal with it anymore, you know. So
Hmm.
learning how to communicate with people, and again, I think a big part of that, you know, I always want the best for the customer too. And like I said, that's, you know, the fight that you have to that's the line in the sand that you have to figure out is like, you know, when am I willing to budge? And, you know, with some things it's harder than others. With software, it's really hard. You know, it's when when you click on this button, only one thing can happen. You know,
Right.
like, is it going to be this? Or is it going to be this? I think it should be this. I think it should be this. Like, it turns into just this, you know, this differing opinion. And again, learning how to communicate those a little better would have maybe solved a little heartache along the way. So, not just
Hmm.
for myself, but for the people around me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Just lessons. I mean, I know you probably got a lot of them.
mhm.
Just because building a business, it just don't happen overnight. You
Yeah,
know. It's,
I mean, you think you have a grasp of the problem, and you realize that there's so many problems around the problem and trying to solve the problem. It's just all problems. It's problems all the way down, but it's also fun. You know, there's something really nice about doing something that you're passionate about, and you know, for me, the software in general and just the customer experience behind software is something I'm passionate about. Like building the most simple way to do something for somebody to streamline their daily work routine and make their life easier. Like, you know, I'm passionate. I like doing that. So it's cool to, you know, get to do that because I see, you know, there's this notion that like work hard in life and like you'll get what you deserve. And like that's simply not always true. Like it's, you know, I've done a lot of consulting and I go consult for construction companies and there's all these people who bust their butts. Like they are working in 108-degree heat. They're out there building homes. They're out there putting roofs on. They're out there landscaping. They're out there, you know, doing construction. They're out there climbing, you know, on rock walls with garbage barrels, 30-pound garbage barrels full of gravel in a way that an acrobat wouldn't try to do.
hmm
And they're doing it for, you know, 25 bucks an hour, which is, you know, it's
Yep.
decent money, but like those are the hard workers, you know. And then there's myself who I go out and I'm trying to help them with the technology flow. And I'm like, hey, do you guys realize it's hot out here? Like, can we go inside? Like, you know,
Right.
this is, you know, there's a difference between like hard work and and like optimization work, smart work, like figure out what you're actually doing. And I'm not saying that the people doing that type of work aren't being smart about it, but I do see a lot of people who break out of that by saying, you know, I've picked up these skills here and I've learned a lot, and now I can go do this on my own. I don't have to do it for someone else again. And so for them, you know, it makes it work in the long term because they go off and they start their own thing and they picked up a bunch of experience. But then a lot of people choose not to do that. And you don't have to. Like everyone has a different journey that they want to do. They have different priorities. But if there is something that you want to do, if it is something you want to go do, is go off on your own. It's not necessarily about working harder. It is. You do have to work hard, but you also have to work smarter in a way that allows you to, like I said earlier, just kind of set yourself up to maybe get lucky a couple times. Like
Right.
you can't get lucky with a customer saying, "Yeah, we'll see what you have to offer," if you didn't pick up the phone in the first place. Like no one's calling you when you haven't started your business yet. You got to put the foot forward. But if you're willing to put that work in and think about the efficient ways to go about it, think about how am I going to scale this because I can't call every single person for the rest of the time. How am I going to scale this as I grow to make sure that when we're reaching out to people, when I have other people reaching out, it's consistent and they're not putting a bad name forward for us. You know, you got to figure out those things, but figure out Start thinking earlier than you need to or think you need to about how is this gonna work at scale if this were to do well, what would that look like? So,
Right, right. You know, you was talking about. I'm gonna ask this question, but you was talking about construction workers, and
mhm,
I remember when I was a construction worker, my first day out on the job, we was building a firehouse, and we had the basement built where they had the foundation of the basement completed at the firehouse,
mhm,
and we had to go down into the basement to do some work. But the only way we can get down there, we had to go down a ladder that was probably
mhm.
about 30 foot down. That's how
Yeah,
far down it was. And the
yeah.
only way we can get to the ladder, we had to walk across a
Mhm.
2 by 12. That's what they
Yes,
had on
sir.
the. They had it on from one foundation to the next. And
Mhm.
I remember the foreman on the job. He was like, "Hey, Marwin, uh, bring the plywood over here so we can take it downstairs." And I'm like, "Well, how we gonna get it down there?" He's like, "Well, you got to
Figure it out.
bring it across
Yeah,
this 2 by 12, man." And I got this piece of plywood in my hand, and the wind is
yeah,
blowing, and I'm like this going across
yeah.
this tube,
Everyone
scared,
there's like, boy,
you
we
know.
hope OSHA doesn't show up.
Man, I'm like,
Yeah,
hey, I was scared. He's like, "You're not coming?" I'm like, "Man, this is my first day out. I got to go down, you
yeah.
know." But nah, I got to cross. But here's my question though. What advice would you give to those that are working those 9 to 5, right?
Mhm.
They working those 9 to 5. They're making $25 an hour or $30 an hour. What advice would you give them to start creating some type of wealth?
See, I'm a little biased towards technology in general. So I'm gonna say if somebody at this point is not using AI models, just I don't mean like creating AI, but if you're not going to ChatGPT or you're not going to Claude or Anthropic, whatever, and using it to learn like how to improve your position, you should be. Like we're at
Mm-hmm.
that point. We're at that point where, you only have so many hours in a day. And if you get home and you say, man, I got 2 hours to put towards something, if you are going to put that 2 hours towards trying to solve every little detail like if you're trying to create every piece of material, like marketing material for what you're doing, like obviously it depends on what you're doing, but the problems are all different, but there's a lot of problems to solve. If you're trying to solve all of that by learning every piece of it without AI at this point, like you would be doing yourself a much greater service if you would take the time to just learn how to prompt AI. AI is really confusing at first because people don't necessarily understand it. And it makes sense. Like I'm just typing words into a box and this robot's talking back to me. Like it doesn't make sense, but you can learn how to ask questions in a way that give you back the answer in a way that you can actually use effectively. And like it's
Mm-hmm.
all stuff that you can learn for free on YouTube. Like you can learn so much from AI. You can ask it to help you figure out it can teach you what it needs to teach you. Like you can just go talk to it like a person, and it will help you out in a huge way. And I'm not saying everyone should then turn that into learning how to AI code,
Mm-hmm.
but you can learn so much about, let's whether it be, I need to open up the business. What's the admin side of things? How do I figure that out? Like it's already got that solved for you, man. Just ask it. It's going to show you all the different links to here's all the links to the state websites that you need to be concerned with. Here's what to fill out. Here's some things to be, careful about. All these things that hold people back. It's like, I don't know how to do that. Like,
Right.
you do know how to type words on a keyboard at least. So you can take that and you can figure out the rest. Like, and it used to just be people would have to Google. Now you don't have to do that. Like this AI is just in such a like a good spot. Now, there is still AI hallucination. Sometimes it's wrong, but usually that is the fault of how you phrased the question. And again, that's why I say just take some time to learn how to, you know, use AI. But that lesson goes a little deeper than just AI. No matter what you're going to do, if you have very limited time, you have to take the time to plan how you're going to go about it. You have to make sure you can't do it forever. You have to, like we said, you have to get off the couch. You have to take action. But if you don't take the time to say, is this an efficient way for me to do this? Or is there a better way for me to do this that gets the same result or 85% of the result for, 10% of the work? Like, is there a way to do that? Leverage those, take advantage of those, as opposed to trying to reinvent every single wheel as you get to that problem, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Yeah,
But
cause
you got to figure out how to leverage those few hours that you do have. But again, the biggest thing is you have to figure out what your opportunity is, and that's going to be, what problem are you solving? You have to figure out what problem you're going to solve before you can figure out how to, at least turn that into a business. In terms of just, paying down debt and things of that nature, it's all just education and knowledge and just doing the thing. Like paying down debt is not super complex in theory. You just write a check,
right,
but you got
right.
to be able to get the money in to be able to do that, obviously. And that's the fight. But it's no one's going to knock on your door and be like, hey, I know the ends aren't meeting at the end of this month. So here, let me just give you some money. Like that's not going to happen. You have to put it in your own hands to go out there and, you
Yeah.
know, make it
I know
happen.
you saying one of the things that I said earlier in the podcast, not this one, but a few podcasts before, and I was talking about adding value.
Mhm.
And I think the more value that you can add, even when you go into that 9 to 5, the more
Yeah,
value.
absolutely.
Yeah, if you can add some
Absolutely. It's
value.
provide the value and then figure out how to extract value for yourself as well. Like what else can you learn at that 9 to 5? What else, like there's always something that you can learn at your job, a responsibility you can take on, something that makes you not just more valuable to the company, but more valuable in your own skill set for yourself in whatever you want to do in the future too.
Hmm.
Like I said, it's just, you know, I'm not saying that you should just jump between jobs, but with every job I've been in, it was what am I learning from this job? Like let's soak that up real quick, and then let's see what else can I learn from this job. And then if you get to a point where you're like, well, I'm kind of tapped on what I can learn, maybe it's time to move on. Unless you love that job, then I'm not saying leave that job, but there is something to be gained for you from the job, from you performing your job well.
Yeah,
It
you
gives you the
said
opportunity to take on those other
right.
those other opportunities.
Because what I heard you saying is don't look at the job as just as a paycheck,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
but learn
It-
from that job because I mean it's just like going to college. You're going and you're gonna learn something,
yep.
and the more you learn, the more you can apply to your own life
Yep.
and
The
maybe
more you can
create
apply
some.
to your life and the more valuable you are to that employer at that
Yep.
point in time, which gives you leverage, even if you don't go get a new job, at some point you could go start looking for other jobs. And then when they come back and realize you're doing work that you've picked up the equivalent that used to be what 3 or 4 people do, now you're doing it because you've just learned it over the years. You put that time in, you put that effort in to learn the value.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a lot easier for you to come back and say, hey, my salary made sense when we had this initial conversation, but now I have this other offer, that is a better offer than you would have had because you now have all this experience that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So I just, your time has to be spent doing something. And if you're going to be at work anyways,
Yeah.
figure out how to make it work for you. Like
Yep.
that time is going to pass. It's going to be spent there. I mean, I've worked at furniture stores and, laid on the mattress and just played on my phone for hours at a time when no customers coming through. Didn't learn anything. So I'm not saying every minute of every day, but you got to talk about mindset. You got to talk about what is my default. My default is going to be I'm going to be trying to learn more today. Am I allowed to have
Mm-hmm.
those days where uh, I'm just tired? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to happen, and you can't beat yourself up about those. It's same as if you miss a day in the gym. Like, whatever. I miss a lot of days in the gym, but I'm
Yep.
also going to go a lot of days to the gym. And today's going to be one of those days where I go to the gym. Like today, the default is I'm going to go to the gym. The default is, I'm going to treat today as an opportunity to learn stuff at work. I'm going to have my rough days. We're all human. Like you're going to have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
rough days, but it's a mindset thing. And you can't get in this mindset of, you have to be diligent of, when you have a bad day, you don't string 2 bad days into 3 bad days into 4 bad days. And all of a sudden,
Right.
we don't even, our default just changed at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because we're talking about mindset, and this
mhm,
actually is one of the questions I wrote down. Uh, but I said a lot of people see problems, but
mhm.
very few people see an opportunity inside the problem. So, what do you think allows you to see something and say, I can build something out of that.
I think enough people in my life have heard me complain about things and then said, "So what are you going to do about it?" That it just kind of drives that point. Like, you know, I'm the kind of person who, for the longest time, and I still do, I'll look at something and I'll be like, "Well, that's a stupid way to do that," and people are like, "Okay, so why?" And you start thinking about it, and you're like, "Well, because they could have done it like this," and it's like, "Well, why don't you do it?" Well,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm lazy. That's why. Truthfully, it's because I'm lazy. But you know, it's very it's not complicated. Like it is it is complicated, but like I said, it's just do the work. Like that's what takes an opportunity from being an opportunity to the thing you're doing is you just started doing it and then didn't stop
Mm-hmm.
doing it. You know, at any point in time, we had several days where it's like, let's just wind up the company. Like, you know, it's let's just move on. Like, you know, things are going slower than we want it to. We don't have the money. We have employees that we can't pay. Like, but if we would have just stopped, you know, it's over. And
Yeah.
the difference is we just didn't stop. Like you figure it out and like you have to kind of you have to commit to it. You know, you have to say like I'm going to take every problem that comes. You have to still be realistic because you don't want to bankrupt yourself in the process. But at the same time, you also have to realize what are my you have to think about your alternatives. Everything is opportunity cost. And it's like I may have to put in more effort right now. You know, more time during the week because I have the 9 to 5 job or maybe I don't. You know, maybe I'm you know, out of work right now and, you know, living off just the little bit of money I have. But, you know, you have to do something efficient with your time. And
Yeah.
like I said, it comes back to the time is going to pass either way. And in 2 years, you know, are you going to be upset that you busted your ass for 2 years? Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
But you may be really upset that you're sitting around and, you know, didn't try anything. Like,
Yep.
and for me, that's you know, kind of what I started to see in those times where it was like I want to sit around and play video games. And, you know, for me, it's also guitar. I play a lot of guitar. And, you know, there are days where it's like all I want to do is sit around and play guitar. But it's like, no, it's not actually solving any problems for people. I got to get out there and, you know, nothing against
Mm-hmm.
guitar. I think it's a great outlet. But, you know, you can't get wrapped up in like, you know, just doing the things you want to do. You got to do something to provide value both to the world and to yourself. And
Right.
if you can find a way to do that in a way that makes you money, great. And that's what a business should be for people. Again,
Yeah.
we turn it into, you know, you have to go do this path that already exists. And it becomes this like almost mystical, like starting a business is something that only rich people can do. And, you know, there's just so many excuses that, you know, is it easier for rich people to start a business? Yeah, absolutely. Like they just call an attorney who files a couple pieces of paper for them and boom. But that they still have to do the work, like in terms of the actual business itself, or hire people to do so, you know, help them with it. If you haven't earned that right yet, you haven't earned that luxury. And so you got to get in there and you got to actually do something. And that's what
Yeah.
I've so many people come to me and say, I have this idea for a business. And it's like, that's an idea for a business, but it's not a business. You know, it's, you gotta, you
Yeah.
gotta actually take the steps. So, but
Yeah. I like that, man. I think it's good too because there's so many people.
oh, I lost you. I can't hear you anymore. Can you hear me still? I can't hear you.
Uh.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Okay. You back?
I'm back.
Okay. Cool. Technology.
Yep.
No. No. But I was
Exactly
saying.
right. I lost you again. I think it's probably Wi-Fi on my end, maybe.
No, I think it might be Wi-Fi on my end because I'm frozen.
I can hear you now.
You can hear me?
I can hear you. Looks like you're back.
Okay. Hmm. I think I'm stuck.
I can hear you. You're a little scratchy, but I can hear you. I'm growing some chicken up here, and it smells mighty fine.
Everybody else is in. Am I frozen?
I can hear you. You're a little scratchy.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
And if y'all can hear me, then that's good. If I'm moving around, I see I'm frozen on my end, so we're gonna ignore my side. But what was I saying? There's a lot of people that stop in the middle
Hmm.
of their goals, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and they don't think it's worth it, or they see things where it's it's difficult,
Hmm.
right? What would you tell that person? Because you might have already answered it. But what would you tell that person that's going after their dreams, that's putting in the work? You know, I know you said something that you kind of got to know, understand. You don't want to exhaust yourself through the process. But what would you tell them?
Yeah, I. That's a good question. I guess realistically, the practical answer is if I quit something because it's hard, is something easy gonna walk through and smack me in the face tomorrow as an opportunity? Like, it's just not gonna happen. Like, you gotta make the most of the opportunity you're working on right now. Like, or if you do have a better opportunity, you have to evaluate that and maybe approach that opportunity instead. But quitting something because it's hard doesn't solve the problem that I'm broke in the first place. It's I'm still I'm gonna be broken now. I don't have an idea I'm implementing it anymore either. I'm in a worse spot than I was just because it was hard. And the way I view a business is until the bank comes through and steals all your whatever you got left, like doors should stay open. You should be trying to figure it out because you never know what's going to happen. There's always potential upside and the potential downside. You're already so close to it at that point that like that's maybe a bad way to phrase that, but the upside is just so much better than the potential downside at that point to just
Yeah.
keep trying it, because we've already at least taken it that far. Now, if you've put no actual work or time into the idea, like it was just an idea that you have that you haven't put any work into, like, but you still keep throwing money at business cards or, whatever you're doing, like, software subscriptions to try and build this thing that you're not working on, like, yeah, get rid of those things. Like, and it's kind of weak, maybe a question we talked about already, or maybe one we talked about in the past, but, how do you distinguish, like, yes, I should throw money at this because I'm investing in myself versus, just I'm just taking way too much risk here. I'm just, throwing this money away. And, yourself better than anybody. Like,
Right.
if you're going to take that money and spend it on something useful, if you're going to try to get a return out of that by doing the actual work that's required of that. Like, am I going to buy a bunch of business cards and pamphlets and let them sit on my desk? Or am I going to take those and am I going to walk outside and am I going to put them on doors? You have to make that distinction. You have to know that for yourself because that's where the line between investing in yourself and just throwing your money away is, at least in my opinion. I mean, there's obviously several variables that go into that. Nothing is one faceted, but I mean, that's a big part of the equation is if you know that you're not going to do the work that's required in the first place, if you're not going to go try to acquire the knowledge that it takes, like you're being irresponsible by putting your money towards it. Now, are you still going to learn things in the process? Yeah, hopefully. I mean, if you don't, it's your own fault. Like that's the way I'm going to put that.
Yeah.
But was it a good was it an investment or was it just, you know, spending money at that point? And
Yeah.
the investment comes if you're actually putting in the time and work to where, investment implies that there's going to be a return. And if you don't give an opportunity for there to be a return, it wasn't an investment.
Right.
So,
That's real talk right there because I've done that.
mhm.
Went out there and
We all
bought the
have.
flyers. Got the
Mhm.
stack of flyers over there, and then the intent is to pass them out, but you pass them out maybe one day, and then
Yeah.
the other couple of days you want to sit on the couch and you lose that momentum.
Yeah.
You know, you
And like,
know.
yeah. And when I talk about these things, it's not because like I know the right way to do it and I always did the right way to do it. Like, I know the right way to do it because I've done the wrong way to do it. So,
Right.
a bunch. Like I've spent those days just laying on the couch, like not taking stuff out when I need to. And, it's just about being better tomorrow than I was today, but I was already better today than I was yesterday. So,
Right.
like just trying to continually build on that, but knowing that, you know, we're all human beings. We're all going to have the days where we're tired and we just don't, we're not going to go put the effort out, but we know ourselves well enough to know if we can force ourselves to get out there and do the sucky part of the work. And if you are the type of person who can get out there and do the sucky part of the work and you can make yourself do that, it's just like working out. Like it's worth the investment. It's worth the time going to the gym. If you just go to the gym and you sit on a piece of equipment and you don't do anything, it wasn't well spent membership or time. Like it was just a waste on all fronts. So
Yep. Yep. Talk to us a little bit about consistency.
yeah, there's always, I mean, a quest for consistency. Like consistency in terms of showing up is critical. Consistency in exactly what you do day to day, I don't think is as critical. As long as you're trying to make some step and take steps forward, I do think that you should have some kind of like routine and schedule that you can stick to at least to the best of your ability. But again, the consistency is just it's like, I think about it again. I'm going to use the gym analogy because I'm more focused on the gym right now than I have been in the past and stuff. But you know, it doesn't matter how good my plan for when I get to that gym is if I'm not going to the gym. I can sit there and I can do all the research as I mentioned. AI can help you through all of these problems. It can teach you the best route. It can teach you exactly what workouts to do, exactly how many based on exactly what you want to achieve. It can tell you exactly how many calories to eat. It doesn't matter how good my plan is until I get up and I leave
That's
my
right.
apartment and I walk into the gym and I do
That's
something
right.
about it. And then I eat, according to the plan that was put in front of me. And it's the same for business. And that's the consistency. The consistency is the muscle of like doing the thing. That's what matters. And it's the first muscle you should work on, whether you want to have a business or go to the gym. It's just that build I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something for this business every single day. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing for the business. I mean, it does, but what matters more is I'm doing something for the business every single day because the rest will come. If I'm spending time on what I'm doing every day, I'll figure out the way to optimize the results as I go, as long as I'm being semi cognizant of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not going in the first place, I can't perfect my process as I go. I can't get better about my process because I never implemented my process. So
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to and guys, I know we're talking a lot about business, so but so if you all trying to get a business, y'all getting a free class. But tracking
mhm.
and how important is tracking?
Depends on what you're tracking. I think for businesses or for personal is going to be different answers. For my personal, I'm tracking: am I drinking water? Am I going to the gym? Am I sleeping? That's like basic. Am I calling mom? Like those types of questions. But for businesses, I do think that it's a little more critical to track. But there's working in the business and there's working on the business. And as the business grows, you earn the ability to hire people and work on the business a little more and less in the business. But in the meantime, we have to be careful about like it gets really easy to sit in front of a computer and spend all your time tracking what you didn't do or what you did
Mm-hmm.
do and not doing the actual work. Like the
Yeah.
tracking has to be a byproduct of the work. It has to be the final step of when I do something, I log it. It maybe in the first thing in the morning, you spend 10, 15 minutes, figure out your day, like get your plan together. End of the day, say, what did we do today? What do I have going into tomorrow? And then you've got your business, your key metrics like that you want to track those things, but don't get distracted by the process of tracking things because it gets fun. Like you can find a million different ways to track anything on the planet if you're willing to waste enough time doing it and
Yeah.
maybe credits or tokens to some software service, but it becomes a trap because it's a way to avoid doing the actual work. You got to figure out like, is it something I actually need to know on an ongoing basis? Then yes, we're going to track it. We're going to figure out the way to track it that uses the least amount of manual steps to keep track of it. Like I said, it's got to be like a byproduct of the system.
Yeah. Yeah. Said one of the reasons I asked the question for me, uh,
Hmm.
because I never been a tracker.
Hmm.
I've always been that type of person. Let's get something. Let's go ahead and start it. and let's see what happens, right?
Hmm.
But since I've been into the financial space, I hear a lot of time track what you're doing, right? So if I'm
Yep.
passing out flyers, it's not just about how many flyers did you pass out, right? But how many responses did you
Yep.
get to the
Yeah.
flyers? So now my tracking is becoming more so not just tracking to be tracking, but tracking for data.
Yeah. Yeah. From a marketing standpoint, tracking is, I want to say everything, like you can create different QR codes that all lead to kind of the same website, but later give you the ability to see exactly which ones were working, which ones did people scan versus which ones they didn't. So tracking in that regard, yeah, absolutely. There's so many things in terms of, there's the actual business work and data, and that's what I would consider that. And then there's the metadata, the stuff like, what was our actual profit? What was our, those things. Obviously, you want to track those things too. But in terms of the actual, like, how do we know where our customers are coming from? There's so many different ways to do that, and there's a lot of good ways to explore that, whether it be, different phone numbers, whether it be different codes on billboards, like all sorts of different things. But by taking that information, you're now able to say, if I have X amount of money to spend on marketing dollars, and I have spent a little bit on this and a little bit on this, and I'm getting a 10% call rate over here and I'm getting a 1% call rate over here, it could just be, and this is the finicky part about small marketing tests, it could just be that there was some really weird luck that skewed the results here. But generally it's a pretty good indicator that something's resonating with this, the way I phrased it over here. And if I'm able to track that, I'm able to see that that's what brought people in, so I can spend all my money on that
Mm-hmm.
instead of spending it on the side over here that just didn't, maybe resonated with me, the person who created it, but didn't resonate with the target audience.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, y'all. Listen, we're running out of time. So before we go, uh, do anybody got any questions that they would like to ask Doug? If so, I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to post your question, and we'll make sure we can get it across and ask it. But while I'm waiting on that, Doug, I want to ask you this question: If
Mhm.
you was sitting down with a 25-year-old, or somebody just not even 25, let's say, because I'm the type of person that don't think you're ever too old to start a business.
Yeah, you're not.
So if I'm just starting a business, what advice would you give me?
I think the biggest one is you have to figure out the value you're going to provide. And that's, we talked about, it's going to be kind of a summary because we did talk about the important stuff tonight. It's not, there's not a thousand different lessons you have to learn in business. I mean, there are, you want to know everything, but you don't have to know everything. You got to know the critical pieces of, I have to provide value to people. I have to fill in my gaps in knowledge with other people's knowledge or other
Mm-hmm.
resources. You have to figure out how to get good about that. And you have to, I don't know if we talked as much about this one. You do have to get lucky, but you have to kind of, I don't want to say stay in your lane because you don't always have to stay in your lane exactly, but you do have to define what your lane is and don't be distracted. Don't put blinders on so you don't see what's going on to your left and to your right. But you have to kind of scope out your idea to the ends of that idea because otherwise everything is scope creep. Everything in life becomes, I started out building this and now I'm trying to build this and I'm trying to build this. And I am terrible with this because it's a real problem in software, but it's not just software. But, this is the problem. So, but you have to fully define the problem and then as close to what you can as the solution. And then don't get distracted by, oh, it would also be cool if I solved this problem in the meantime.
Yeah.
Come back to solve that problem later. You got to solve the initial problem first and earn the right to come back and add to it because otherwise you never get anything done.
Yep. Yep. That's some good stuff, man. I appreciate you. So don't nobody have any questions? So brother, I just want to thank you for joining me tonight, man. For
Yeah, that's right.
joining the Faith and Finance family tonight. I appreciate you taking time sharing your experience, man. It was
Cool.
uh it was a
I
lot of
appreciate you having me.
yeah, no problem, man. It was a lot of wealth and knowledge, y'all. So like I said, if y'all starting a business and I think a lot of things we even talked about can be applied to just personal finance. If you look into to just try to get your finance together, because we talked about this earlier that everybody don't want to actually be wealthy or have a lot of money. But whatever you're trying to do, I just encourage you to apply these principles, right? So, yeah, but I want to thank you, Doug, for being on here. And if everybody, if you're watching tonight, I hope you heard something that is encouraging you to challenge you, or cause you to think a little differently. And listen, if tonight's conversation brought up some questions about your own finances, and you simply want opportunity to sit down, I want to share my QR code. All right, so you can scan my QR code here and schedule your complimentary financial checkup, and we'll sit down one on one. We'll talk about your goals, answer your questions, and start looking at what makes sense for you and your family. So while the QR code is up there, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the page so that you can be and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified every time Faith and Finance Tuesday come up. The whole purpose is for us to encourage you, to give you wisdom, to give you knowledge, so that you can become better in your life and in your finances, in your business, in your family. That's what Faith and Finance is all about. So again, y'all, I want to thank y'all for being here. Thank your family. Thank your family for being here with me tonight. And I will see you next Tuesday, same time. Thank you.